Last week we talked about strobes in the studio and how super simple it is to use. Today we're making it a little bit more difficult and mixing in some LEDs. Hey everyone, Stephan here. I hope you're doing well. I know I say this every week and it sounds like it's just sort of falling out of my mouth, but I actually honestly mean it. I really hope you're all doing well and having fun creating something. Some of you are free to go, others are locked in at home or have to wear masks and have to be careful. So I think it's a perfect time to be creative. If you can't go out, do things at home and maybe, use whatever lights you have if you are then into photography. So last week I showed you how super simple it is to get the right settings for strobes. If you use a light meter or if you just go by eye, it's super easy. Today we'll make it a little bit more complex. I want to mix strobes with LED color changing lights. Now, the strobes that I use are 1200 watt second lights, which are super powerful. Compared, the LEDs have absolutely no chance. So if I point those lights, the LED lights, onto the backdrop and then I fire one of my strobes, the color on the backdrop is gone. So what to do? How can we get both to work together? That's the goal for today. So what LEDs are we talking about? This is one of those panels. As you can see, they're not high-end photo gear. They are made for clubs, for discos, for one-man entertainers. They're really cool to the eye, but they're not having that punch that you would need for photography. The ones that I use here are quite cool because you have 3 sections and you can change the light from the top to the medium to the bottom section. So I switch them on. As you can see, they're pretty cool. Red, green, blue, and you can mix them however you want. Looks awesome to the eye, but how powerful are they once we mix them with strobes? That's the issue. And how can we then fix it to make it look awesome? So I'll run around again. I will point those 2 panels at the backdrop. We'll take a photo. We see what we're getting using first the octa bank and then the magnum reflector. Can't even remember, but I also have to get the model in. So if you would excuse me. There you have it. Even with the video light that is on right now, it doesn't quite cut through. So we have to change a few settings even on our video camera. Dial that video light that illuminates me at the moment down, change the settings on the video camera, and then we will get some serious red. So let's do that next. Well, this is how it looks like on video, not too bad. However, it's video. So we're shooting 25p, that means we should have a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. We shoot at ISO 800, which is native for any log footage, and that's okay. But for a photo, especially mixing in the strobes, very different story. So let's take a photo with the camera without any strobes on and see what we get. At our previous settings, f8, it's just black. How about we switch one of the strobes on? Do we still have the correct settings? I think it was quarter power for the octa bank, and I think it was 1/32nd on the magnum reflector. So this is the octa bank, and this is the magnum reflector. As you can see, the exposure on the model is just fine. However, the background is totally washed out. So to fix this problem, we have to forget about the strobes for a moment and we have to expose our photo for the red background first. So let's do that right now. What settings do we need? I have no idea. So let's just try different things out. This is our first result. I changed the aperture from f8 down to 2.8 and we're getting that red slowly. But it's still not enough, so we have to up the ante with ISO. So from 64 to ISO 100, to ISO 200, to ISO 400. So now that we have the settings that we need on camera, all we have to do, just like last week, is adjust the strobes until we get exactly those readings. It should be that simple. Or is it? Well, let's do this first. Old man needs his glasses, otherwise I can't read. So let's take a measurement. We're switching the light meter to 400 ISO. There you go. And we take a reading and it says f20. That's the current settings that we have. So let's do our math in the head. 20, 16, 11, 8, 5.6. You can do your maths yourself. So I would assume that we have to dial it all the way down to the lowest setting we can have, which is 1/256th power on this strobe. And what reading do we get then? It says 3.6. So we're still a little bit too bright. Now, the only way we can fix that is move the light a little bit further away. I can't lower it anymore, so we have to work with distance. What about this light here? So let's switch to our other light and have a look. That was before at 1/32nd power. And what do we get? f20. So even if we dial this to the same point, minus 1/256 or 1/256th power of the strobe, we will probably get f9. So with this light here, there is no way we can match the lighting unless we start to either move that light further away quite a bit, do your inverse square law calculations yourself, or we diffuse it. Just like with that light here, there's obviously a diffusion panel on it. Well, we can do that here as well, or use a grid. So with these changes, the octa a good amount back, I think about 40-50 centimeters. The magnum reflector, which was way too bright, now has a grid on and that shower cap, that diffusion cap. And what do we get if we measure it now? We're getting 2.8, exactly what we need. That's sheer luck. Okay, usually I would go back and forth and move those light stands around until I have the right setting. In this case, it just worked out. Well, who said we're not allowed to be lucky or have a little bit of luck? So let's take some photos. Let's see what happens when we use the octa and when we use the magnum reflector, because even though now we have the right settings for our model, the big question is still how much will it blow out or influence the background, or do we keep that beautiful red? Let's see. We're nearly there. The lights on the subject are now correct. However, they still spill onto the background. So there's two more things that we can do to fix that. Number one, we're using a grid and we're moving the lights further to the side so that they don't spill onto the background, especially with a magnum reflector, which right now is pretty straight on. There will be a spill, so we would have to move the light and then adjust the model accordingly, which of course is not a big deal, but it's more maneuvering around. The other thing, of course, you can do is in Capture One, you just fix it within a few seconds. So that's entirely up to you. Now, the whole point of this episode is to show you that while something looks really great to our eye or even on video, it can be quite tricky to mix it with strobes. But eventually, if you move things up and down, ISO, aperture, and so on and so forth, and the same with the power on the strobes, you will get the result that you want. There is, however, one scenario where all of this becomes much easier. That is when you're not lighting the background, but fire the light towards the camera. But to see what's really going on, you need something in between here. And that something is smoke. So we'll take a few more shots with the colored background. I just changed the light from red to blue to green. That all now works pretty all right. But remember, these are disco lights. The moment you fill this area with smoke, you will get that awesome look. So they're really for playing. I hope this episode helped you a little bit to understand what the give and take is if you want to mix things like that. But if you really want to use those lights to their full potential, turn them towards the camera. Use a smoke machine or throw some flour or whatever, and that will really create the magic pictures. Anyway, Jason, you asked me to create this episode to show how I fiddle with these things, so I hope you enjoyed it, and everyone else, I hope you did too. Well, here are some photos with smoke, and I hope I see you again next week. And until then, create something awesome and stay safe.